Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, boys and girls, welcome back to the No Bangers Sports Card Podcast. This is episode 9. I've been told this is episode 9. Rod is no longer putting episode numbers in Roman numerals with his hands, thank God. We are joined today by the illustrious co-host, Mr. Rod from Picking and Punching Cards. We have Cary from American Arbitrage Cards, Tim from Over the Years Sports, and the man, the myth, and the legend, Ivan, a.k.a. Watch the Breaks, is joining us today. And ladies and gentlemen, it is a few days past Ivan's birthday. So, in the comment section below, I want everybody to put in Happy Birthday, Ivan, hashtag No Bangers, and I'm going to select one of those comments for a giveaway. So make sure you do that, and we're going to be rocking and rolling. Thank you for joining us today, Ivan.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for graciously making that the entry method. I thought you were going to say guess his age.
Dude, you only turned 50 once, man. Happy birthday, man.
I said happy 50th. Nobody caught it.
I will say I had a moment today, the day after my birthday, when we're recording this. Someone tweeted on Twitter, which I'm old enough that I still call it Twitter, and they tweeted a very cool card of my favorite baseball player, Chris Bryant. Mm-hmm. And they said it was a dual auto with him and Anthony Rizzo, and they said, "Oh, I loved watching these guys when I was growing up." And I was like, "What? They're
they are current.
It's
that moment. We all have that moment. We're like, oh man, now I feel old.
Yeah,
I feel old.
So did you buy a box to open for your birthday?
I did not. We actually were dealing with a lot of sickness in the house, and so it wasn't. It's the age, you got kids. You know, the best part of the birthday was that a cake magically showed up from my parents, who live relatively close to us. But yeah, it was fun. You know, actually, the real best part of the birthday is just how many people are friends on social, friends from the hobby that reach out and say hi and check in, and it's heartwarming. It's something I love about the hobby. Something I've been preaching for, 14 years now, since I got back into the hobby and became a bit of a talking head. The hobby is the people. At the end of the
Absolutely,
day,
man. I mean, that's the biggest thing for all of us with District and Dibbit cards was the community all come together. You know, you have the aspect of the Discord, you have the live selling, you have the static selling, but more or less is being able to interact with people. And that's the whole reason why we started this podcast, because we wanted to get back to community, be able to interact with everyone, and we love it, man. So it's good. But Ivan, why don't you introduce yourself, kind of tell everyone, who you are, what you do, and we know you've been collecting, getting back in the hobby about 14 years, but give us a little background about yourself.
Yeah, so I did collect as a kid. If I had time to hang it, I have this awesome Chicago Cubs mural behind me. Fell off the wall when the power went out and the humidity got too high. But I've been collecting since I was a kid. My very first pack of cards, I pulled an Andre Dawson pop-up all-star card, if you remember those, from 1988, 89 Donruss. And I was a Cubs fan already, so getting a Cubs insert back in the 80s when there weren't hits or parallels, there was just inserts, I was hooked. And I collected all through the 90s up until, 16. You're in high school, you got a job, you're playing sports, you got a car. It just becomes a lot. And that was also right when the junk wax era expanded beyond just high production numbers into a ridiculous amount of stuff. So my PC at the time was a Bengals wide receiver named Darnay Scott.
Darnay, yeah.
Maybe we'll get into that conversation later. Maybe we won't. But I probably still to this day have the world's largest Darnay Scott personal collection. And it was like 1997. I was looking at the Beckett, and I'm like, I'm never going to get every one of his cards. There were so many different products at the time. And that was kind of when I got burnt out a little bit and stepped away. Fast forward, get out of college, move to Los Angeles, have a real job, get a real apartment finally, because if you live in LA, you live in like 7 different apartments the first 2 to 3 years before you find one that you're going to stick in. So I finally found a real one, and in this apartment there was a closet. We moved all of our stuff in, and there was this one closet that had this space up above it that didn't have we didn't have anything for it. And I had collected like 3 or 4 hobby boxes over my first couple of years there, where I had literally opened the box and put the cards back in the pack because I was transient, right? You know, you live here for 6 months, you live here for a year. And I was like, oh, I'm going to take these cards and put them there. And then I bought some boxes to organize them and some sleeves. Next thing you know, I picked out one that I had 2 cards of the same player, Mark Sanchez, and they had a different picture on one. And I'm like, wait, what's up with that? It's the same card number. So I looked it up on literally Beckett Online back then, and it was a variation. And this was just in time to where a Mark Sanchez rookie card variation was still worth money. Like, I sold it the off season after their second AFC appearance. If I had waited 2 more months, the card would have tanked. So I got like $60. Yeah, I got like $60 for this card, and that was when I was just hooked right back in. So,
what
awesome.
can you tell? Because I'm always infatuated by the young stud muffin LA Ivan, you know, and there was can you tell the people what, like, where Watch the Breaks came from? For those of you that don't know, Ivan on Twitter is Watch the Breaks, on Instagram Watch the Breaks, because I think that's a super fascinating story that I find super interesting. Can you tell everybody briefly where that came from and the origin story behind that?
yeah, so it is kind of funny because the name sounds like I'm promoting breaks all the time, and ironically, with my role at District and my large social media following now, I spend a lot of time promoting breaks. Where the name came from, I mentioned I was in LA. I moved to LA for the entertainment industry. And after a few years of being back into collecting, I was like, you know what? I should make a web series about my failures as a collector. Because I would always do these things, then post on Twitter, man, I can't believe I just did the dumbest thing. I made this mistake. I made that mistake. You know, overpaid for something and didn't realize it was in the same state. So there was a giant sales tax bill on it, you know, back then when eBay was just state-based. You know, like I said, like not noticing the variations. So in my Hollywood career, I got very lucky and partnered with a guy who actually is the voice of of LAFC Soccer Club. He's the announcer for them, but he was a filmmaker and a writer as well. And we made this comedy series, and it was called The Breaks. And it's about this guy where he's trying to do these other things, but collecting always gets in the way. And our first episode that we put on YouTube, and this was 2013, before anybody was doing like YouTube hobby content, Beckett did a write-up on it. And so we got attention, we got views, and I started doing giveaways, and we did 9 more episodes. So there's a fun little narrative story you can find called The Breaks if you go on YouTube, and that's where my name came from. And then I got enough of a community around me through social media that GTS Distribution, one of the largest sports card distributors and trading card distributors, they were launching a podcast, and they asked me to co-host it. And so through that, I got to do all kinds of cool industry events over the next like 7 years. We co-hosted, me and my co-host were the national main stage MCs for like 5 years. Got to go to the NFL rookie premiere. Got to go to, you know, spring training events with Panini and things of that nature. So that's been my journey up until now. And then now I'm working full time in it, doing admin.
So wait, I got to ask. So you were doing all those really cool events. What happened? Was it the family life, or what took you away from that then?
Yeah, so it was, you know, there was a lot of shifts in the hobby. There was a lot of growth in the hobby, but yeah, we had our 3rd kid 3 years ago about, and it was just taking a lot of time. I had a different full-time job, and, you know, just doing all of that, and the older kids go into preschool now. It just hit a point where I just had to step away and say, there's something I got to cut from my life. And unfortunately, it's this really cool thing that I'm doing on the side and that I'm super blessed to do. But just ran out of time for that. And so, yep.
Interesting. Do you miss it?
You know, not really. I will say, actually, so it's funny. If it sounds like I'm bragging about co-hosting the main stage at the National, it's the worst way to attend the National. You're on stage trying to entertain. Generally, it's, you know, the the widows and orphans, right? It's the women and the children that are not as into the hobby, while they're coming along to support somebody, and they're looking for a place to sit down, and so you're entertaining them. Super fun job. But the best way to attend the National, in my opinion, is see your friends and dig through the quarter boxes or the dollar boxes, or I'm old enough to remember them having dime boxes at the National. Those were the days.
So my background is I did professional wrestling for several years, but I was also on tour with a professional MMA company. I was the director of marketing, and we had like a national TV contract and stuff like that. So I traveled like through the U.S., went over to Europe and stuff like that for fights. And I will tell you, it's not what it's cracked up to be. Everyone's like, "Oh, you have the awesomest, the best job in the entire world." I'm like, it's great. You have a lot of fun doing those things, but at the same point in time, it's still work. And then sometimes that takes away from what you actually enjoy doing. You know, they always say like, you know, the best, you know, find what you love and turn that into a career. Kind of what you're doing now. Same thing with all of us here. But at the same point in time, is at some point in time that does turn to work and does take away from what you do. So, just a little shout out to everyone out there, man. Is if you love it, do it, make it a passion, but don't work at it so hard that you take away from what you actually truly love and enjoy, because that does happen to a lot of people. They end up falling off and then go sideways on it. But
absolutely,
yeah. Well,
Cary, is there a lion in your house?
Is there what?
A lion in your house?
Why? Oh, because do you hear that too?
No, but I saw you looking around like
a
tiger.
No, I think it's like raining. I thought it was something like I'm got to make sure I turn something off if something's like I don't know. I was concerned, and I'm like, how do I handle this while Ivan's talking? So I think it's just raining here. I'm not used to Florida where it rains like, you know, in Vegas it rains once a year and the casinos flood. You know, they're not built for any kind of precipitation. And out here it rains all the time, so that's what it is. I figured
once a day, right? It's like every day you get an hour. Once a day,
there's like
we go through a drought out here, but then you hit raining season, rains every single day, and then but it's usually it's weird from like 4 to 6 it rains, and then right before that looks completely fine. Rains for an hour, like all hell's breaking loose, and then rest of the day it's completely fine.
It was just tripping. It was tripping me out because I'm like, I don't know what that sound is. Like it sounded like my hard drive, but it's unplugged. So I'm like, I don't know. I thought maybe like I don't know, maybe there was like carbon monoxide in the house and I was tripping. Maybe, I don't know. I thought I was tripping out, man. I'm fine though now.
Well, I gotta ask actually, because I feel like we dove into talking about Ivan, and this is the No Bangers podcast, and I've watched every episode you've done. You always start off actually with like topics, and so I'm honored to be a guest on here. But like, what's happened in sports cards this week that's hot or worth talking about? What have I missed? Because I was sick.
This is going to be 2 weeks in the future, right? So we got to guess what's happening.
So we're filming this in advance. So usually when we have to, you know,
I got an idea.
Travel or
the combines, man. Remember the dude who did that thing at the combines? It was like, whoa! And his cards went up, man. His cards went way up. Did you sell them? Maybe we did. There.
All right.
That was a Dave impression. That was a Dave impression.
That was.
So what do you think you could run the 40-yard dash in? Go first, Rod.
I know I ran the 40-yard dash, and it was like a 5.2 when I played. I was a slow outside linebacker, man. I played outside linebacker in college. I ran a 5.2.
What about you, Ivan? What can you run a 40 in?
Now, the 6'9".
Cary, what are you running the 40 in?
This is the thing about 40 times. That's faster than you might think for a guy that's over 40.
Yeah, I mean,
with kids.
I'm power walking, speed walking like the 80s people, just with the swivel hips. I probably could do like an 8.7, just kind of swiveling. I think an 8.7.
I could run a 4.65 40. Probably.
Yeah,
6'5". Yeah, right.
Get back to us in 3 years after you've got that kid and those chicken nuggets.
So what are you? I know that you do a lot of everything, and we recently talked about a little bit about the Tops Now and the Panini Instants and stuff like that. How much of that are you doing? Because I know there's one that you do. It's a little bit different, but kind of the same. And it's one that Cary and I have talked about doing, a little while back. And that's the Parkside sort of aspect of Parkside Now. So they have a membership and they have a Parkside Now. You want to explain a little bit what Parkside is really fast and women's soccer cards?
Well, yeah. So Parkside has a program called Pronto that they do every year, and I think it'd be interesting if Panini or Topps were willing to adopt this model. Though maybe it might cost them money because they have those million print run once or twice a year type things. Before the season, so Pronto, it's not every day; it's every week, and they release 5 to 7 cards a week. So you can buy it that week, but you can only buy it as a pack. So you can't buy the individual cards like you can with Topps, but you can subscribe at the beginning of the year for like $250, $300 and get every week. Plus benefits, like they do a special award, mid-season awards that only the subscribers get. They do a special rookie card that only subscribers get, and then you're guaranteed each week you get your shipment. So I always do that. I love it. I think it's such a great, fun program. This year we might actually create a membership around that on the Women's Soccer HQ where you could buy your team. Like you could buy your team, and then whoever is running it, whether it's me or Mike or someone else, they'll get them and ship you your team once a month. So it's like you can get all the Angel City or all the Utah. I'd love to see somebody figure out how to do that for Topps Now. That would be really fun and cool, I think. But yes, so the reason I love this and that I love Panini Instant, which I just sorted my cards so they're all out of reach right now. And I did love Topps Now, but the price point has gotten just a little bit hard to make this work. When it comes to reselling, I am well, what do we all hate doing when reselling? What's your least favorite part of reselling?
Listing?
Shipping.
So Cary's right, but at least shipping, you know you're getting money for it. Listing, you don't know if you're even getting money for it. So most people hate that the absolute most. Shipping is a grind, but shipping at least means you sold stuff, right? So what I love about Panini Instant or Topps Now, sometimes depending on the card, and Parkside Pronto is I get 5 Pronto subscriptions, I create 1 listing, and I can get 5 sales from it. I buy a 25 pack of Panini Instant, I create 1 listing, and I can get 25 sales from it. So it's a really efficient way for me as a seller to get items and sell them that way. So that's why I kind of like that style more so than just ripping packs at this point. And I also, getting back to the time thing, I don't have the time to go to shows and comb through for deals, which is super fun and awesome. I just don't have the time to do it on a Sunday morning. I've got to take my kids places. I've got to do things like that right now. So maybe in 10 years I'll be recycled back into that ability. But right now it's just not there.
Wait, so I got a question. So they send you the cards every week. You get is it like a pack in the mail you get every week with the card?
Yeah, because they do have parallels.
No, that was my next question. So is there inserts are going to have parallels that you can potentially get in these packs when you do open them? Okay.
So like here, actually, this is Timwa Chawinga. She was the leading scorer in the league last year.
Kansas City, right?
Yep. And actually, I hit, so I mentioned I have 5 subscriptions. I hit a black parallel and a red parallel. The black is out of 10, the red is out of 5 in my batch there. I'm not organized enough. I don't know where the base set is in my stack, but those are right in front of me. So that's cool. Also, actually, this week, sorry to date the podcast, Topps announced that every Topps Now card they release this next year is going to have a parallel count. And they're going to release a different number of parallels based on how many the print run is, including like if there's a 250K print run, they'll add chrome parallels.
Yeah.
Cary said, "Do not let them get to 250,000."
Not let them get to 500,000.
Yeah, I just think it's wishful thinking by Topps. That I feel like we talked about it in the podcast we recorded earlier. I think they've milked that about. I mean, I don't see another LeBron, Steph, Durant card moment. But that's the thing about moments; you don't see them. So maybe there's something I can't foresee.
Yeah.
Well, Ivan, so question for you. What is the resale value in that? Because we, on the previous podcast, we talked about when Topps Now, they release their cards up. If people they're buying bulk because they want to get the parallels. They get discounts when they buy it. Because I bought, like when they did the Shohei 50 on 50-50, I bought 5 of those because it saved me $2 a card and I had more chance to get like an insert or a parallel at the time. So, but we also talked about, the week 1, 2, 3 after they get released, those prices is dip down. So they're, if you bought $10-12 for your card, those things are reselling for $3-4.
So that's the way you have to be a little different. And now everybody's going to start doing this, and it's going to flip. But as you can't go after, like, the Steph one was never going to be a valuable card, so I didn't buy any of that. That was just banking on getting that one of one. Saying, oh, these are better odds because there's only 690,000. So I have a 1 in 690,000 shot versus whatever other pack there is. But as an example, on Dibdick Cards, I don't know if your audience knows about the site, dibdickcards.com. It's a fantastic site for reselling.
I've let them know.
So I bought, Panini had a set called Panini Captains, and there was 42 cards in there, NFL set. Had rookie cards of Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix. 42 cards. If you bought in bulk, which is a 25 pack of the sets, the set price was $42, so roughly $1 a card. I sold the Jaden Daniels for $40 on Dibdick Cards.
Let's go.
And that was a $1 card. Now, the Kyler Murray was also a $1 card, and I've only sold one of those. I need to sell 49 more, but the one of those I still sold for $4. Fees, net, blah, blah, blah. I actually netted $1.88 after all the fees and the cost of the card. But I track all of that stuff. And so what happens is you have a Bo Nix, a Caleb Williams, and a Jaden Daniels. Those are going to be profitable if I can just sell those 150 cards, and then everything else is icing on the cake. So, also, this past weekend on Dibdick Cards, I sold a TJ Watt for $4.95. Well, that's just icing on the cake because the Jaden Daniels have already covered the entire purchase. So that's an example. But that particular set, you talk about these other print runs, that set, only 351 were purchased. So it's literally a rookie card out of 351 of Jaden Daniels. It's a rookie card of Bo Nix out of 351. Kind of crazy. So looking for things like that people aren't looking at, but then understanding at the same time how search engines work and how eBay works and how Dibdit works, and knowing, hey, this is something that'll stand out. If someone's searching Jaden Daniels rookie card and they see that this is a rookie card and it's low numbered, they're inclined to click on it and look at it. They don't have to know how the set was made or the fact that it was a direct set. Not that you hide it, but it's like people are less concerned about that. They missed the drop. Now there's only 351 of these. They're going to go buy them.
What's your number one source for information on the hobby? Because I know you're huge on Twitter, and I owe a lot to Ivan to getting into the hobby world of Twitter and stuff like that. But there's so much information that goes on, and there's so many different ends of the spectrum. Whether it's YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. What do you find to be the most useful as far as information goes surrounding the hobby?
Did I freeze?
No, you're good.
Oh, okay, cool. I got a little slow-mo freezy there at the end. But for me, it is Twitter. Twitter updates in real time. A lot of the updates are line items. Instagram is cool, but you got to listen to somebody talk for 30 seconds to understand what's going on. Sorry, Cary. I know that's your bread and butter. But I find that just keeping up to date with stuff, Twitter is the absolute fastest. And it has, in my opinion, the best community because people actually talk back and forth to each other in real time. Conversations happen. I've been on Twitter threads that have had over 100 replies. Not like that many different people, but like me and two other people talking back and forth and back and forth. I also love it because it allows you to have simultaneous conversations and information. So I can be on Twitter and I see something about cards and I start a thread on that, but then I see something about Ferrari and I start a thread on that, and then all of a sudden in my notifications I've got 3 different conversations going on at the same time. But you can handle that because it is still an async method. Whereas on Instagram, I feel like you can still only have really one clear conversation at a time. So that is my social network of choice, as well as my news and information source of choice. I hate a lot of the recent changes. I feel like they've been throttling the content I want to see and promoting content that I don't have any interest in. But even with all that, it still is the number one source for me for that.
Awesome.
How about you guys?
I thought I was froze there for a second too.
Oh, no.
Tim, you mentioned that you've gotten into hobby Twitter more. Like, what's your take on that?
I mean, I find it to be very interesting. Now, I do think that, it's just like any other social media where you're going to have, like, these ends of the spectrum where it's like one end of the spectrum is, like what we talk about here on No Bangers is like there's this is ruining the hobby and like, like this super like negative, like stuff that goes on Twitter. And then it's like, but then I can find a lot of information. Like for me, especially, like it's important because there are a lot of people that report on like breaking news, and like for what we do as far as like hot, like like the bargain boxing, it's like there's a lot of useful threads on like short prints, image variations, case hits, like that sort of stuff that we really look for when we're digging through bargain boxes, and like. There is a visual aspect, I think, to Twitter that people don't realize exists, because I think people look at Instagram and TikTok as more of a visual, informative like aspect of social media. But you have that on Twitter too, and I think that that's something that's growing on Twitter. Is a lot of the like short form. Horizontal content on Twitter, I think, is something that's growing, because a lot of what we're used to as far as short form content is vertical. When we're dealing with YouTube Shorts, we're dealing with TikTok, and we're dealing with Instagram. So I think there's a lot of information there, and I think that there's a different aspect of Twitter too, where you had talk about, which we talked about in one of the early episodes, and that's like selling on Twitter. And like, I've been recruiting. Shout out Frank the Tank, if you're listening. Not Frank the Tank, Michigan State fan, my good friend. I've known since we were kids, and he played baseball with me. But Frank the Tank, the Twitter sports card seller, who I'm trying to convert to a Dibdit card seller. But there's a lot of that on Twitter, which you see like stories selling, but it's a little bit different on Twitter. It's a different community in my opinion. But like that's a huge thing on Twitter, which I never knew about. And like trying to kind of convert some of those guys over to Dibdit cards is like my new like goal in Twitter life. But there's some things that are coming along, and I know the Android app is something that is down the road, but it's coming very sooner than later, hopefully. And
Well, we have an Android app.
Yes,
I don't know what you're talking about.
We do. But the full-blown Android app. So for those of you that don't know, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about how your background in District and how that trickles down into Dibdit cards and stuff like that.
Yeah. So about 3 years ago, 2022, we'd gone through this big boom in the hobby, and again, I was this, account that had followers and had community. And so, and I'd also, with my role on the podcast and just with my Twitter, I was always analyzing pros and cons of different networks, different platforms. I'm friends with the guys who founded Loop, and I absolutely love what they've built there. I was there when Whatnot had a smaller booth at the National than Loop, and I saw a lot of people don't talk about this, but how Whatnot grew so quickly was their top breaker running incessant Facebook ads and spending more money than anybody else to reach a Facebook audience that wasn't buying on any platforms. Like that's where that all started. So I've been analyzing and seeing those types of things for a long time. And someone reached out to me via DMs and said, hey, me and my buddies, we used to work together at Snapchat, and we left to start an interesting tool for communities and marketplaces. And I was in LA, they were in LA, and so we got coffee. And what they pitched me was District. And it was so mind-blowing to me as someone who had seen the way that platforms work versus the way that communities work. When you're talking about things like the stack sales on Twitter, or people that go live on YouTube just to do auctions. And there's so much better stuff in community that happens, and that giant platforms falls through the cracks. They just can't manage it, or they just can't look at it the same. Even eBay, I was always intrigued by the way that I would come up to eBay at events and say, hey, you could change this. And they're like, yeah, but it doesn't apply to automotive, so we can't do that sort of thing. kudos to eBay. The eBay standard envelope program for trading cards is an example of them doing something category specific that was really revolutionary. Anyways, long story long, these guys talk to me.
Man, do you know Tim does not use standard envelope?
Yeah, he doesn't.
He does not
believe in standard envelope or other things.
Dinosaurs.
Dinosaurs, standard envelope. Upper Deck has an entire line of dinosaur relic cards that don't exist.
Yeah.
Yeah. You didn't know that? They have.
Of course you don't know that because you don't believe in them, bro. You don't believe in dinosaurs, so you're not going to believe in the card.
Yeah. Topps has Santa Claus cards too with his autograph.
That's cool. Santa Claus, dragons, aliens, ghosts.
Mrs. Claus. My friend. I'm actually friends with Mrs. Claus.
Really?
The person who signs Mrs. Claus's autograph, or did. Anyways, long story long, they were talking to me about my community, and I was at this interesting juncture in life where I'd done this sort of business building for a long time and community building. And what they pitched me, I immediately saw that it was much bigger than just me doing this for Twitter, for sports cards. It was, but this could also apply to somebody that's an influencer in VHS tapes. And the idea is that the tools that we normally jump to platforms for, running auctions, doing live sales, a 7-day auction, those are all just tools. And these guys helped build Snapchat. So I'm not saying creating video selling is easy, but for them it's a little bit easier than it is for you or I. And they said, if you have a community that exists, why do you have to sell them basically to eBay or sell them to a whatnot? You have to say, I want to do live selling, so I have to go here. And now the second I'm done being live, all of that community I brought to you belongs to you. And who knows who they're going to end up with.
Everywhere else, buying from all sorts of other people.
Yeah. So they said, what if we created a suite of tools where people could build their own marketplace for their community, keep their community there, but still get all those really cool tools like running a 7-day auction or going live and selling stuff live with that speed and velocity of live selling. And so I fought to get them to say, basically they were the founding team, and I said, hey, who's going to be doing this? Who's going to be doing the community building for you? It's really important, really crucial. Can I? And I managed to get a trial run as a contractor, and then they made me a full-time offer, and now I'm full-time with them. And I run the sports cards and collectibles communities. So I work closely with these guys with Dibdit Cards. I work closely with Cary and his other cohorts with Dibdit, their marketplace for toys and plush. We have marketplaces for... We have a marketplace for woodworking tools. So there's a guy, Rex Kruger. He's a big woodworker on YouTube, 400,000 followers. And if you want to find a woodworking tool, that's the place to go to, because they don't make them like they did in the 1920s apparently. And he's got 5,000 people in his marketplace just talking about buying, selling tools for woodworking, and then showing off what they do too. And I love that community component. So, sorry, I gave you a really long answer there, but that's because it's the thing I'm most passionate about.
I have something that's interesting because you see all these communities, right? And there has to be some that you are new and I know nothing about, and then I will tell you, I don't know what your most wild thing you learned through all these communities is, but I watch the plant people. Right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Who knew?
And I was I looked at my wife, and I'm showing it to my wife, and I'm like, Josie's looking at me like, what are you doing? These people are selling seeds and plants for $500-$600.
It's a big business. Oh my God, it's a big business.
You want to know the coolest part about that though?
Long time.
Think about owning that marketplace. If you're the person in plants who has that community and that audience that wants to buy and sell and micro cultivate and cross pollinate and create new things, you can create the seeds and sell the seeds for $200, and that's going to create 20 plants. And then 9 months from now, the person who bought the seeds is going to take the plants from those seeds and go sell them on your marketplace. It's like flipping. In a really cool way.
I need a PSA 10 seed.
Yeah, like how do I create a seed that's going to just spawn new cards? Yeah.
It's interesting, man. That's a very interesting community. But there's a ton of things people resell out there, man. Like you go, it blows my mind. Like there's a person that sells not on District, but on eBay, they sell beehives and they sell like wasp nests and stuff like that.
Let's get them. Let's get them.
Something like there's always a market out there. You just have to find your community. That's what the point of this is.
Yeah, I've said that for years about reselling. Like, just think of random stuff. Go look up sagebrush or whatever, right? And go look it up on eBay. And there are people selling pieces they found on the side of the road.
And here's my ultimate pitch for District and Dibdit cards, but I also love that you guys let us talk about the different communities that District powers. Again,
after
women's soccer, such a great example. I love Dibdit cards. I love you guys. I've sold cards. I've sold football cards on Dibdit cards very successfully. I'm looking forward to going live once I have a chance to get my head around me. If I want to sell a women's soccer card, I'm going to go put it on what's called the WOSO HQ, wosohq.net. There's only 700 members there. Only. Those 700 members love women's soccer, collect women's soccer, have PCs. We've had 2 different women's soccer players whose highest card sale of record is on the WOSO HQ, not on eBay.
That's wild.
That's awesome.
And Mike's a guy that we've talked about before, and he's somebody that we want to have here on No Bangers because, like, Cary and I got into women's soccer cards from Ivan and from Mike, who both run
I got
women's
into it
soccer.
from Tim. So.
And then I got Cary into it, and like we were at National at the soccer sideshow at like nighttime, and we were going crazy. Cary was like, Tim's running around chasing these little girls, handing out free NWSL packs.
Yeah.
I went there after we went to that soccer only little shindig they did at the National offsite. And first off, the women's soccer cards at that moment were hotter than the men's soccer cards, and may still very well be the case. But I went in there thinking, okay, I'm spending my money at the big show, and I ended up. You saw me, man, just like with boxing. I'm like, dude, I went crazy at that show. It was so much fun. So yeah, I went all in on that.
Are they doing that again this year at the National? Like, are they going to do the women's soccer? Because it's in Chicago.
I hope so. It depends, because the reason they did it in the first place was a lot of these people couldn't get booths at the National. Because it's there's a network of people who have had booths for 40 years. So I hope they do something off-site somewhere. Have these little rogue niche shows. That'd be dope.
I think the challenge with Chicago is that it's harder to find an off-site that's close enough, because Chicago's a way better venue than Cleveland, but most people stay right by the venue, and there's not a lot outside of it. It's right by O'Hare in Rosemont. Sorry, guys, dealing with the tickle still. Just over 2 weeks of being sick. So yeah, sorry. We could talk National all day long, actually. I've got a lot of fun stories.
Are you going to go this year? Because we missed you last year, man.
Yeah, last year, Cleveland is so hard to get to from Omaha, plus again with family and stuff. It's like I got to be able to justify it. I think Chicago should happen. Should happen for at least a day, if not longer. But I hope they can figure out how to do it. It's just a little harder because people in Chicago, they don't want to leave that little vicinity of the National, whereas Cleveland, there is no place near the facility. We lost Cary. I talked a little bit of crap about Chicago National.
So Cary and I, when we went last year, we stayed like 20 minutes outside of Cleveland.
Oh, it's so far.
It was fantastic. We loved it. Like, it was so easy. We hopped on the freeway, no traffic. We were there in 20 minutes. We saw all these like stories on Instagram and Twitter of like massive traffic lines, and me and Cary and our boy Jimmy, shout out Old School Flips, we literally just drove right in every single day for 5 days straight, no problems. And like it was interesting because we saw, and that's another thing with like the hobby and like, social media. People will spin the narrative a certain way, but like we loved it. We had no problems with Cleveland at all, right, Cary?
I hate Cleveland as a venue.
Well, the only issue with Cleveland was you just no internet. and with what we do, social media stuff, it made it a little bit more difficult. Like I would have loved to have been, like my social media of choice, like for the instant like reaction is Instagram and everything. But I was going to ask you about Twitter because I have a Twitter that I don't use very well.
I got him to sign up.
Yeah, you did get me to sign up with my hobby account and everything. And is there less, like, because I feel like on Instagram, one of the big drawbacks with social media, sports content or any kind of content is kind of the algorithm baiting that can happen. Like you focus on one type of content because it gets views, whether it's necessary or not. The vibe I get with not TikTok, it's similar on TikTok, but with Twitter is that it might be like more just like, let's talk cards. Let's not worry so much about how many people see this, but let's get into the breakdown of the Topps 2025 set and what to look out for. What's the SPs? Is it more like that on Twitter?
Ultimately, if you want to be found, this goes back to showing my age. I'm old enough that my mom used to say, if you want to get a letter, you have to write a letter. And so on social media, on YouTube and on Instagram, I think we're a little bit spoiled because if you make the good enough content, people will respond to it. On Twitter, it's about replying to people or talking on theirs and creating threads of conversation is really how you get noticed, more so than just like having the viral video or having the one hit that everybody looks at. So it really is more work and living. It's more like a message board. Really what Twitter is they took the old forums and they made it something that you don't have to comb through in such a laborious way, where you can have multiple, again, it's like having multiple conversations at once instead of like moving into this conversation and just staying there on a message board. So I'd say ultimately the difference maker on Twitter is having that many conversations. That said, it can be really tough then to start because you need a time commitment to do so. I probably couldn't do it at this point in my life. I'm lucky that I did it back in 2013, 2015, 2018. So
let's go back to the National for a second, because you talked about you hosted it for several years. You're on the main stage, stuff like that.
Yep.
So we're talking about all three of us are going to be going to the National. We're going to probably do a little meet and greet at one of our buddies' booths. Vintage Sports Flips, shout out there.
Oh, he has a booth?
Yeah, he had the booth.
Does
that's
every
cool.
national. His booth
that's
is
awesome. I didn't know that.
crazy.
It's
His
different.
booth is crazy.
It's not so much cards; it's like vintage sports stuff. So.
Yeah, I'll probably recognize him finally seeing him there. I only know him from this. I know his hands because I watch his live streams. But I'll probably recognize him in his booth.
He killed it at the National this year because he brought vintage clothing, sports clothing, which no one else really had. So he had definitely an advantage on that. And he does like pennants and a lot of other stuff. So he does a lot of cool stuff, but definitely a good booth and stuff. But why don't you give some people some pointers, some tips? I mean, they've never been to National, a big convention like that. A lot of people have gone to local shows. So you being there, being part of it, being part behind the scenes with it, I mean, what would you recommend people to do? How they approach it? Because for a lot of people, it's very intimidating to go to one of these big events because there's so many people there, so much money that's being passed through. So walk us through the process. Someone who's brand new, never been to National before.
So the first thing is, if you're hearing this for the first time and you've never been to the National, don't be intimidated at all. The National is so big that you will find the cards, the collectibles, the things you like, and it's also so big that you can get lost in a good way, right? Like you don't have to, it's not like you walk in and everybody looks at you, oh, who's that? They don't know their way around the National. Like you can just walk in and just walk until you find the thing that matters to you. I would say, if you're watching this podcast, you've got 4 people here that should be on your list to see, at the very least. And I know all of these guys will respond to DMs on social, myself as well. If you're planning to go, say, like when you get there, you can't plan these things in advance, really. You guys could. You could say, hey, at 3 o'clock on Tuesday or on Friday. Sorry, Tuesday doesn't exist. National expert. Go there on Tuesday. On 3 o'clock on Friday, we're going to be at this booth. But just the day of, hit up people like Cary, hit up people like Tim, hit up people like me and say, hey, I just got in. Where are you? And it may take 30 minutes, but you'll connect and say hi. And having anybody there. Yeah, go ahead, Cary.
If they have internet. because I had that happening this year in Cleveland. Like people were like, I was planning to meet up with some people, and they told me they were outside, and I got no messages for 7 hours in there, and I got out.
That can be a bit of an issue. So maybe plan it a
night before.
My thing was always like, I was easy to find because it was like, hey, I'm going to be at the main stage, like, so walk up at any time and say hi. But if they have somewhat of a home base, you can even say like, hey, yeah, Vintage Sports Flips will be there at this time. But do that, because the best part of the National is the people too. It's so much seeing these people that we talk to on the internet 365 days a year, and then having a day where you can actually go and see them and catch up and realize that you're friends, even though you've never seen each other's faces, and you know what each other like, and you know the stories behind why you collect Thurman Munson, or why you collect Chris Bryant, or why you collect Doc Gooden. Just thinking of some of my friends out there, it's like you say a player's name and I think of somebody that's connected to them. And in the same way that I get excited collecting because it brings me closer to, say, Chris Bryant, now collecting, if I hit a cool Thurman Munson card, brings me closer to my friend who has that. Now collecting, if I hit a cool Jaden Daniels card, brings me closer to Tim, because so keep that in mind as well. It really is about finding, even if you only have one social media friend, that can make all the difference if they're at the National and you can meet up with them. And if you have a lot of people that you ping on Instagram or talk to on Instagram, like, it's really cool to set up that, like, hey, let's actually connect and see each other and just be instant friends. Because beyond that, it is just like scheduling. Like, oh, I got to hit this booth, or I got to do this, and there's maps for that, and there's guides for that. But it's so much about, sorry guys, finding a person or a few people that you actually get to connect with in person. That'll enhance the journey. And maybe you do shopping first, and then when you see them, you're able to show off what you picked up and talk about it. But that's what I love about the National, and really the way to approach it, I think.
I love it, man. I mean, that's what you guys pretty much did. I mean, you guys walked around, did your bargain boxes, took in the whole show. I mean, you guys made a 5-day event out of it. Where you guys were able to backstage, get some good memories from some celebrities you guys met.
So that was my first National ever. Yeah, Cool Runnings. I don't know if we ever I have that footage, Tim. I should send that. Put it on. You sent
it to me. I have it.
We should put it on No Bangers though.
Yeah.
Because I'm back there. Like we got the media pass somehow, and we were back there, and I've never been that close to people. Like I have Chevy Chase making obscene gestures towards me, like jokingly, just like making jokes, and like nothing bad, but like. And the Cool Running guys were there, and Tim just goes crazy with the Cool Running guys, and he goes into their whole speech. Me, meanwhile, realizing I've heard the speech before, but I don't remember from what movie. And I was put on the spot because I'm next to Tim, because he's like, you say it too, and I'm like, I don't know what's happening. and I don't. Tim's very interested in this saying. I vaguely remembered it, and it was a great moment. I filmed it.
Yeah,
and you had it filmed too, I think.
That was crazy, because so basically when you're back there, like, you really see like the amount of memorabilia that some of these guys are signing is crazy. Like, we're walking by and Edgerrin James is just on a helmet after helmet after helmet after helmet after helmet.
So for the setup, for the people who don't know, is backstage when you guys ever go to the convention, it doesn't have to be the National, other conventions, they have some of the big autograph companies that do come there. And what they do is, because all those athletes, all those celebrities are in a concentrated area, they'll literally have like a whole back room rented out, and they'll literally have like 50 tables lined up. And what Tim's talking about is they'll have like 3 full tables, 8-foot tables filled with football helmets. It just 3 lines of helmets, and they're going right down the line, just signing, because they're trying to knock out as many autographs as possible within that short period of time that they're there, to maximize their profits and maximize the money. So that's what Tim's actually referring to there.
Yeah, and like there was a lot of people. We saw Dan Marino and Troy Polamalu like just having a conversation.
That was cool.
And like, because it's interesting, because that was Cary's first National. That was my first time like being backstage. Right, so like we didn't really know what we had access to.
Yeah. we were having a debate the whole time. I'm like, we got media passes. Can we go back there? And we did the whole let's just see what happens. And we just walked back there, and they were cool with it.
Live your life, man. Sometimes it's better to ask for forgiveness than it is for permission, and that's what you guys did, right? That's exactly what you guys did.
But It's so different than when I was a kid, because if I was 11, 12-year-old Cary, I would have been freaking out seeing these sports stars. I don't know what I would have done. I would have been crying. And now I'm more just interested in like, dude, this has got to be a trip for this guy. Just like to have all these people around, have to sign all this stuff. You know, I don't know, more empathetic and like I'm more interested in the human aspect of it than I am actually meeting these people. I just thought it was fascinating.
Well, you start seeing them that way, like when you see people on TV, especially in the '80s. Let's
Yeah,
call it what I
exactly.
think it is. if I'm
Exactly.
looking right.
Yep. 80s.
Like there's a screen between you. They become something else. They're not accessible. Well, now with social media, they're a little bit more accessible. We get to know them a little better. And then with some of the circles that you start to run in, you bump into them. Even in Las Vegas, I'm sure you saw famous people at the casino,
yeah.
and you're like, oh wait, he farts and burps too.
Yeah.
That happens
Which was
to them.
surprising to me, but yes.
They sleep, they wake up, like, and that you actually start thinking, like, oh, if I was Dan Marino signing all these helmets, what would I want to talk to somebody about, right?
Yeah.
It's not about my playing career. I'm done.
Isotoner gloves.
Yeah. But you see Troy Polamalu
Great
and you have
people.
something to talk to them about.
Yeah,
But
no, I think about that all the time. Like, do I really want to talk to them about the same 5 questions they hear every time they're out and about, or if I did talk to them, would I want to just talk to them about something normal? That'd be more interesting to me.
So I'll tell you an interesting thing. So I used to do a lot of like horror movie conventions and go to like Comic Cons and stuff like that. But I was when I would go there, I would plan like well in advance. I would find the most unique stuff to get autographed or signed, because that way first it starts a conversation. Also, too, when you go up and talk to them, if you talk to them something like off the beaten path of them, it's going to be a completely different experience. And I'll give you an example. There's an actor named Tyler Mane. He played
Sabretooth.
Yeah, Sabretooth. But he also was Michael Myers in the Halloween remake. All right. And when I walked up to him, a lot of people know he used to do professional wrestling. He was a partner with like Kevin Nash. So when I walked up, that's the first thing I said to him. And let me tell you, that whole dynamic of that conversation changed completely, because that's something he never gets asked about at the conventions, and stuff like that. Or I met Kane Holder, who was the guy who played Jason in Friday the 13th. Well, I brought an NES game, the Friday the 13th game, the box, everything, to have him autograph and sign it. Man, let me tell you, he went on a complete rant about this, about how he made $0 and they use this, they use it.
Yeah.
He made zero money, but it was a good experience, So when you bring these things to people, when you guys go to sports conventions or meet these famous actors, like, look for stuff off the wall and stuff that they just probably never normally sign, and it will add to your experience. That's a huge takeaway when you go to that.
So I know you went to Fanatics Fest, and before we get into that, because I think that's an interesting conversation to have, and to kind of lead into that, how much more do you think athletes are getting into the hobby now? And do you think that is because we have social media, so it's a little bit more magnified than it was in previous years? And what do you think that that's doing for the hobby? And then kind of talk about that transition into like you going to Fanatics Fest and what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, so there's 2 things on the athletes getting into the hobby more component. One is actually what Rod's just said about Kane Holder and I didn't make any money on that Nintendo. Like, athletes see how much their stuff sells for, and I encountered this when I was in Hollywood too, before the hobby. Sorry, guys. It's one of those days. Like, I worked for a really famous producer, and he would not sign, if a letter came in without a name on it or requesting it without a name, he wouldn't sign it, because he knew that person was going to go try to sell it for $50. He would sign every single letter that came in he'd give them a picture and personalize to Tim, to Rod, to Cary. But if it came in without a name, he would not sign it. It would go in the trash. Because he saw then what his stuff was worth, but athletes may not have paid as much attention to that until they start seeing, oh, there's $1 million Justin Herbert card sold. Justin Herbert had a card sell for $1 million. And I'm signing these for $5 a pop. They start seeing their value more in it. So that got their attention. Combined with the fact that the deals that the leagues have made now are actually tied in. Oh man, if Cary's yawning, I must be really boring on this. my business of sports speech.
Sorry.
No, it's not. It's my fault. That's
No,
good
it's not you.
feedback.
It's Cary being Cary.
I know.
Just
Sorry, Cary. I shouldn't have
getting
even
up
called you
way
on
too
it. This
early
is so
at
funny.
11 a.m. this morning. That's Cary right there for you.
Well, it was 11 a.m. Eastern. That's like 8 a.m.
That
Pacific.
is true. That is true.
But you're saying about the athletes, about they signed a deal with, about how like Top signed a deal with the Players Association.
Yeah, so they make money now if this company goes bigger. And a lot of them have invested in hobby-related businesses too. So a lot of them are invested in the hobby getting bigger. Now, I have a very plus-minus relationship with Fanatics and what they've done to the hobby. I have a very plus-minus relationship with Panini and what I think they've done to the hobby over the years. I'll sum up that entire relationship and context with something that I saw just last night, which is I read a quote from Enzo Ferrari, and Ferrari has 10x'd in the past decade. They went public in 2015, and they have 10x'd since then. In an era, during COVID it happened, but since COVID, there's been a lot of contraction. There's been a lot of shrinking in luxury brands and in automotive. So the two things you think about with Ferrari, while they're getting smaller, Ferrari continues to get bigger. Well, Ferrari's entire business savvy or business approach is summed up in this quote from Enzo Ferrari, which is, every year we are going to make one less Ferrari than the market demands. I don't know how many the market demands, but we're going to make one less than that every single year. We're never going to say, well, the market wants all these Ferraris, so let's go make a bunch of Ferraris. So they're making less stuff, and yet their company is growing in immense value. Or they're making less stuff than the demand. And I see this huge knee-jerk reaction in cards where it's the opposite. It's like, oh yeah, we got to get more of it. We got to get more of it. Yeah. While that actually destroys in a lot of ways. I'm sure Fanatics' profits are up, but I think the hobby in general is actually down from where it was 2 years ago.
It would be interesting to see what would happen if there was more true one-of-one kind of stuff, like there was back 10 or 15, 20 years ago, where there was one-of-one because it was a one-of-one, and that's it. Yeah. Now, they're making negative refractors, frozen fractors. They're making, number to 5, but there's 17 variations of the number to 5, depending on what offshoot of the brand. It seems counterintuitive initially, but like over time, actually creating some demand for some actually rare cards could drive product sales.
Yeah. Well, that is one thing that they did that really good. So this is the plus side of that relationship. The pro debut patch in baseball
Huge.
is now worth more for the average player and maybe the above average player than their one-of-one Bowman Chrome Superfractor. Yeah. Like you see a one-of-one, and part of that is the players are chasing them for the first time ever. Yeah. Players didn't really chase their superfractors, but they're like, oh, I wore that. I want that. And it's known that the provenance is there. So that's 2.5 on why players are getting invested, at least in baseball, in a cool way. But also something that is positive towards that. But how do we grow? How do we have enough product, but without destroying the demand, is something I think the manufacturers still blow way past. And don't.
Well, I think that's something they're gonna fight. That's something that's constantly gonna be a battle, because you're going to overproduce. You try to pull back, and it's not enough, and you're just a constant push and pull struggle you're gonna go through.
Yeah. So...
I mean, think about Fanatics. Fanatics was a gangster. That was a gangster move, what they did, acquiring Topps and how they did it back in the day. I mean, like Topps was, at one point in time, they had a potential estimated value of like $1 billion. And, Fanatics came in and said, what, I'm just going to take your licensing from you. Topps was about to go, they were about to go public at that time, man. And they just came in, like Soprano style, took Major League Baseball away from them, and they had nothing left. They had no choice but to sell it. And they sold for a fraction of what the company was valued at. So shout out to Fanatics. I mean, taking their shot and going for it. I will say that, like, they definitely have made some steps in the right direction.
Yeah, I'll counter that with the problem I see long term. If anyone from Fanatics is listening, please pay attention to this. Is they ended up getting it, I think, for so cheap, and they have such reserves that they're able to just bulldoze. And I think that's going to hurt the hobby. I think it's already hurting the hobby. I think their strategy of releasing a box at pre-sale $110 and then releasing it at $130 on the release day, but having such small quantity that it appears there's demand for it, and then sitting on a warehouse full of pallets and pallets of that and trying to sell it to their breakers at $150 and $170 because the secondary market price is now $190. But that's a bubble. That's literally creating a bubble. And I don't think that I think they have enough reserves, or they have enough coming with base football and basketball that they don't care. But they're going to burn so many other people that are going to step out of the hobby. And I've seen this over the past 2.5 years. Some of the best breakers I know getting out of the hobby. And yeah, maybe that makes it a little easier to manage. Like, oh, we have less people and so we can devote more. Yeah, but I think that really kills your reach to grow the hobby. You think that these athletes are the ones driving it. You think that these marketing activations are the ones driving it. And I still think there is no lifeblood to the hobby. Sorry, me and the dog both. There's no lifeblood to the hobby like cottage industry marketers. Let's call it backyard breaks, overspending on Facebook ads, reached an audience that Panini wasn't reaching. A huge audience, and that's how they grew at the very beginning. That's how they got 6 figures of followers, was doing marketing that Panini wasn't doing. And I think that type of thing is going to be lost in the very near future. It's already starting to diminish.
What do you think happens for all of you guys? What do you think happens with Panini the minute those licenses go away? What do we think happens? Because does Fanatics try to just acquire Panini and put out Prism with the licenses? Does Panini
already tried?
They did, and Panini said no, right?
Yep.
Well, somewhat well documented hearsay that there was a matter of small percentages that Panini refused to budge on, and Panini Italy said, well, we don't care, too bad. And yeah.
So Fanatics is going to have Panini, so we will get licensed.
No,
No.
Panini won't sell.
They won't sell. But here's the thing that they don't.
Allegedly, there was a 3% difference in the price, and that was enough for Panini's
I think
Italian owners to say, too bad, we don't negotiate like that.
I actually hope they become like, and I don't think they will, because I don't think they're innovative enough, in my opinion. But I'd love them to be like a bigger Leaf, because I think Leaf is severely underrated.
Innovative enough, they released the kabooms.
Oh,
They
yeah.
changed. Here's what Panini did that changed the industry. They created. It's funny because it sounds like the opposite, but they created ink and paper assets versus hard assets, which is signatures and relics.
The case
They
hit.
they made the case hit something which you can produce as many of as you want, whereas signatures go from $5 an athlete to $15 an athlete to $50 for some athletes now. Mbappe originally never signed autographs because he was asking $2,000 an autograph, allegedly, to sign for Topps. So you'd get 10 autographs and it would cost you $20,000. So the case hit, you can produce 1,000 Mbappe downtowns though, right?
Yeah, it's a good point.
So I do got to say, Panini they've done a lot of innovation.
Yeah, but,
That's fair.
but I mean,
Sorry, Cary, I didn't mean to. These are the things I
No,
always
but,
reply
no.
on your videos, and I'm like, blah, 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 blah.
no,
But I can't ever
that's
have these in
actu-
person conversations.
Well,
no, it's
here's my
actually-
take. So
I agree
they
with you.
don't-
That's a good point.
they don't need Panini. They have Topps Chrome. Topps Chrome, Topps Finest will be their Panini, or Bowman's going to be their Panini going forward. Like their main brands they do. Or I'm sorry, Prism. Like they don't need Prism. They have their Topps Chrome and other things. But I think Panini's going to follow the same path as Upper Deck. Upper Deck once had all this licensing. Upper Deck was the one who was innovating the entire industry, putting the autograph cards in there, signing exclusive deals with athletes. The Upper Deck changed. I mean, the foil pack with the tamper-proof foil pack, like when everything else was little wax sealing. They took all the steps to change it. I would love if Upper Deck made a comeback and was able to get some of these, these sporting licensing or go back into that again. Because Upper Deck was one of my favorite things growing up, opening up, and all the different like subsidies they did and everything else. But I think Panini's going to go the same way as Upper Deck and just start focusing on all the other things they can get their licensing for.
So
might be
you
an
think
outlier.
Prism? You think Prism gets made after they lose their license, and they still make Prism football and Prism
The way they do
basketball.
with baseball right now, yeah.
Yeah, they're doing draft right now. I love the Prism draft product. They got Saiyan. They got the exclusive rights to Julian Saiyan, Rayola, Arch Manning. I mean, the draft. I mean, there is an argument that Draft Prism isn't that much different than Bowman U right now.
Bro, they do it right now for baseball.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah,
it.
but
I'm not saying it's
it's
the ideal product, but it's still
Yeah.
a product. They could still make something.
And the one product on my radar this year, since Topps X-Men Finest already released, X-Men 97, Minecraft. Panini has Minecraft coming.
I saw the
Dude.
Minecraft Color Blast with the pixelated Color Blast.
Yeah.
Those are going to be crazy.
I think Panini may get really creative using some of these pop culture licenses, which would be awesome. I'm all for Minecraft cards. I know Upper Deck, I think, just did Halo, something like that. So I think there's a lot of room in the community for more things than just licensed football, licensed baseball, basketball, and hockey. There's more
I'd love to see them actually get into entertainment show. I wish we had more entertainment products.
100%. 100% agree with you.
Bugs me that the two shows I'm watching right now that I absolutely love are Reacher
Love it.
and Invincible.
I love Invincible.
Probably content warning, Invincible, don't watch it if you don't like dark content. It is mature
cartoon.
rating, blood stuff,
It's
lots
a
of that.
cartoon.
Yeah.
Do not be fooled. It's not for kids. All right, just put that
Yes,
out
it's
there.
not for kids. Do want to just let our wonderful family-friendly audience know that. But like I can't think of a good trading card set since the Walking Dead sets for entertainment. I mean, I guess Star Wars. Star Wars always has new sets come out. But outside of The Walking Dead is the last TV
That's
show I can think
funny
of that
you
had
said
good
that.
content like that.
At the card show on Saturday, I was digging through the bargain boxes, and I had picked up the dude had it all organized by different stuff. So he had Playboy cards, he had Star Wars, he had WNBA, everything organized, right? And this guy was next to me. He's like, "Hey man, did you see any Walking Dead cards in there?" And I was like, "Nah, I haven't seen any Walking Dead cards yet." But I didn't, because I watched Walking Dead when it first came out. I had no idea they had Walking Dead cards.
Oh yeah.
Who
they
makes
have
Walking
relics
Dead
and-
cards?
Was it Cryptozoic?
I can't remember if it was Cryptozoic or Rittenhouse, but one of
What
those
happened
two.
to those companies, Rittenhouse and Cryptozoic? They were making non-sport stuff pretty heavily.
I mean,
right?
to be honest, Cryptozoic, sorry, this is going to get personal. A good friend of mine, guy who pretty much ran that division, passed away unexpectedly a little bit before COVID. George Nadeau. I'd see him every year at the National. Wonderful guy. And sometimes companies like that, we obviously on the outside, we see huge, there's so much value there. But they're like, yeah, it's a lot of lift, it's a lot of work, and we already have this toy line, and we have this relationship, and they do stuff with DC, special DC collectibles and stuff. And so I just think that it's just a matter of hey, it's also hard to hire.
I just looked
It's
it
hard
up.
to hire and bring people in.
Cryptozoic. Cryptozoic did it.
Yeah, so they did The Walking Dead. Rittenhouse has a huge following for Star Trek and James Bond, and love them to death. They don't have to do any marketing, and so they don't do any marketing. And it means that in a lot of ways they don't put out crap products. They don't put out junk wax products. They put out really meaningful products when they do, but they're just more focused on that. Not everybody is always how do we 100x this and how do we do all of the rest. Some people are happy.
What happened? Wasn't Topps? Didn't they come out with Zero Cool? That was they're going to be their entertainment line.
Zero Cool wasn't Topps, was it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
Topps.
it was owned by Fanatics. Yeah.
Yeah, it's owned by
Oh, I
Fanatics.
didn't know that.
Yeah, so they came out with Jackass, and then they came out. Well, they also had the
Zero
guy from
Cool
Stock-
did Stranger Things.
Yeah, they also had
did
the guy
stuff
from
with-
StockX, though. That's when he was over there. That was his division, I think. And then he ended up leaving the company. So one of that just fell to the wayside.
Did he leave the company?
Yeah,
Has that
he
ever
left.
been confirmed? Has that
Yeah,
ever been
well,
confirmed?
No. I mean, I know he started as I
He's
could have
doing
sworn it, but
the little figures now.
yeah, he's
Yeah.
done
Which
little
is not the
figures.
best way to
Yeah.
say it. I forgot what they're called.
Is he still getting paid by Topps though? Or is he still getting paid by Fanatics?
Great question.
Questions people don't often ask enough about.
Go-
But hey, let's talk some positive stuff too, though. Tim had asked about Fanatics Fest, and we got down this wonderful rabbit hole of. Oh, speaking of which, actually, I just ripped a box of Star Wars, and I hit a. Y'all don't even know. So this guy Cyril Karn from Android, he's an American who's won the Olivier Award in London for best stage performance.
See, I love that kind of stuff. Like where you
Picked
you
up
get that
3
a lot
more
in
of his
Star
autographs.
Wars too.
Yeah.
Like there's an actor or actress that is more famous for a different role, and they don't have
Yeah.
a lot of autographs at all.
Yeah.
So it's
Mads
beyond just Star
Mikkelsen.
Wars.
I once did a case break of Star Wars. I hit a Mads Mikkelsen black auto numbered to 10. If you don't know, he played Hannibal in the TV show Hannibal. He also played the villain in Casino Royale, and he was the star of this really incredible, like, it's almost like a silent movie about Vikings that the director of Drive did before Drive. It's way better than Drive, in my opinion. It's like this avant-garde art noir Viking story. Yeah, so like people like that, you can hit that card. I mean, just see how excited I get. That's what I love about entertainment
people buying
cards
it beyond Star Wars fans. There's just fans of the actor or actress.
Yeah, I've never seen a Star Wars movie before from beginning to end. But
They're real and they do exist.
but I did
You
see.
live under a rock.
Yoda has signatures. Yoda is real.
I know. I got an out of 25 card I found in Star Wars in the bargain box this weekend. But I saw you pulled a sketch card. What? Tell us about the sketch card. What's?
Yeah, 101 sketch card of Anakin Skywalker with lava behind him, seemingly. I've had ridiculous luck with my sketch cards lately. The last 4 individual Star Wars things I've gotten, I've hit a 101 sketch card in.
What do you think? So Anakin Skywalker, that's a pretty big character, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So what do you think something like that would be worth on the market?
Somewhere between $80 and $220. It's hard because sketch cards can be so dependent on the art.
The artist.
So the interesting thing is, the artist as well. I think this one is better. It has some color to it. It also looks, in my opinion, looks cool. But you still got to find somebody that wants to buy that. And so it's funny, this getting back to the pricing, this was from Star Wars Hyperspace. I bought 1 box. It's like $180 a box. They've since gone up to like $210, $220. And I hit a really cool hit from it. And I'm probably still not getting my value back. It's a great product at $99 a box. It's an okay product at $129 a box. I don't like it at $179 a box. And 90% of the time that we don't like a product, it's not that we don't like the product, it's that the price is wrong. Spectra. Spectra is the coolest, shiniest product Panini makes, but the prices for a box are so insane relative to the value. It's like, you bring Spectra down to $130 a box, I will be hyping it and talking about it and ripping it in football all day long. But I just can't justify those box prices.
Did you see the price? We were trying to figure this out in the previous episode, and I never even looked it up. Do you know what the price point was for WNBA Prism?
No. Too high. Way too high. I think it was over $1,000 a box.
I heard that it was the most expensive Panini Prism basketball release of all time.
I don't know that that's true because, man, during the pandemic, things were crazy when it came to Prism. Plus, Zion and Ja, like that was pretty big. So I don't know exactly, but I don't have the exact number.
Zion's down to his lowest weight since being drafted. By the way, just want to throw that out.
What would Zion have to do to even rival the relevance he had 5 years ago? He'd have to have 3. If he had 3 straight MVP seasons, I don't think he would be as hot as he was in 2019.
I think he needs to score 100
gone.
points in a game for the rest of the season.
Yeah, a game.
And the offseason too.
He needs to dunk over 2 cards.
He needs to win a couple Academy Awards.
There you go.
Start acting.
So Fanatics Fest, you did go to the Fanatics Fest. That was something that Cary and I talked about. Obviously, it's tough because right after National, we go to 127, which is the world's longest yard sale. And so, that's going to be an interesting journey from Chicago this year than it was from Cleveland last year. So I'm excited about that journey because just being on the road, it's going to be a little bit difficult for me this time. Not necessarily I'm going to be there for both events, but it's going to be a little bit more harder on me emotionally because it'll be the first time I'll be away from my kid. But so Fanatics was right after National. Am I dating that properly?
I think it was 2 weeks after.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, there is no comparison between the two. they're just such different events. We talked at the beginning about running the 40. At Fanatics Fest, you can run the 40-yard dash against your friends, and there's a timer, and it feels like you're running it in the combine, and you
465,
can get a
baby.
video. Yeah.
We're
I
gonna
would say
we're
the
gonna
cool-
check.
Coolest thing I saw was the WWE setup. They literally had the entrance ramp, and you can actually walk out to your favorite music, walk down the lights, everything going on, and then they had like Triple H and all these random wrestlers just randomly show up and go through it, and while people are doing it right next to them, it was awesome.
So there's spectacle, but was there any substance? Is what I'd like to know.
Well, that's substance. I got to see Triple H. Like you know, if you and me in 1989 had been able to see Andre the Giant in person at an event,
Well, that's
walk
true, but,
out.
like at the National, you see hundreds of people signing, right?
So-
like it's a
Well,
more
yeah, if you like go over to
interactive
the
experience.
signing thing, yeah. Well, so what it is. It's a sports convention. It's a sports convention, and I don't know if you've gone to a sporting event in a larger city. A lot of times, smaller cities don't have as much of this stuff, but maybe I'm wrong. I haven't been to a St. Louis baseball game or a Minnesota basketball game. But like in LA, if you go to a basketball game, there's all kinds of, there's like a space where you can shoot a 3-pointer and like try to do that like out in the state. You know, the Kia sponsored this, and if you go to a football game, there's a place where kids can like run through like the pylon things with a football. There's all these engagement events. Plus, like you go to Dodger Stadium, there's actually a place you can walk through and see some of the greatest Dodgers baseball cards of all time, and like the Dodgers Hall of Fame, and you can see that kind of stuff. Well, what Fanatics Fest did was it brought all of that together for a lot of leagues and or a lot of specific to New York teams. So like the NBA had a setup there where you and your buds could do a 3-on-3 challenge on a real size basketball court and setup and all that. The NFL had the 40-yard dash thing, as well as seeing every single Super Bowl ring ever. So in LA, they don't have that on display. They have LA's Super Bowl rings, you know, the 1 or the 2. Well, here you could see them all, as well as the AFC and the NFC Championship trophy, and get your picture taken with the Super Bowl trophy, like the real ones. So it's like all that in one spot. You know, MLS was there with a setup that's similar things. So instead of like, I get this if I go to an MLS match in a major city, it's like I'm getting it here from MLS and NBA and NFL and Major League Baseball. Something that nobody seemed to talk about or go viral that I thought was the coolest thing. Keep getting tickles in my throat at the best moments. They had a simulator that analyzed your baseball swing and told you which player you were the closest to and by what percentage. Yeah, and I'm like,
cool.
I did that, and I saw nobody posting it to
Who'd
social
you
media.
get? Who'd you
and
get?
my post didn't even get any engagement on social media. But I was like, this is the coolest thing. Like,
Who are you
there-
compared to?
I got Aaron Judge.
Okay, Ivan.
It was a
Okay.
27% match. But yeah,
He's like
If I
doing
do
his
that-
23andMe. He's like, I was 1% Aaron Judge.
If I do
1%
that
Mark
this year,
McGwire.
If I do that this year, I'm getting 100% match for Julio Franco, guaranteed. I'm gonna practice it because he's my
well,
hero.
yeah. So that's a fun thing is you could. I thought about that. I'm like, should I impersonate somebody? But I was like, let me just go with my regular swing and see what happens. But like, I'm a 40-year-old guy, and I'm like, oh, this is exciting and fun. Let me go do it. You know. So there's all of that experience tied in with little things that are more like museums. Like they had like covers of Sports Illustrated history museum. And within that, there would be things where it's like, oh, here's the cover from this Super Bowl, and here's Tom Brady's ring from that Super Bowl, and here's Tom Brady's rookie card and his 1-of-1 from the Super Bowl year. So they had these like historical things as well as the engaging things that helped educate. And then also what was cool was cards were sewn into the fabric of that. You know,
They were
cards
30
were...
30%, right? Like 30% of the show was cards.
Yeah, and so then there is also a setup, which is a card show with the most expensive card show booths ever. But ironically, I say that, and I talked to a lot of dealers beforehand, and they were all expecting to lose money and were kind of doing it beholden to Topps a little bit. Well, a lot of dealers that know me personally and have always been true with me, when I talked to them at the show, they said, this is great. People are buying cards. People are, and they didn't bring a lot of cheap cards because of the table cost and the lack of space, but people would show up and say, oh, I can get a Manny Machado orange card for $60. That's really cool. I didn't know that existed, you know, a gold parallel or something. And so they were selling really well with those like $50 to $100 cards because the people that were showing up had paid a little bit of money for the event, were expecting to pay a little bit of money for cards. And so every dealer that I talked to said it was actually a really good show for them.
They may have been getting real collectors in there that weren't sitting there checking 130 point right, trying to get 95% comps too, possibly.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole purpose of the event, was to bring in new clientele or people that for the experience, and then hopefully they stay to buy cards and experience by everything else. Now, you lived in LA. How would you compare that? Have you ever been to like the San Diego Comic-Con or anything like that when you were out there? Because that's like the biggest event for like entertainment and
yeah. It still didn't hold a candle to Comic-Con,
Okay.
but the idea was there a little bit. It's a convention for sports. Like, what would a convention look like for sports?
Do you think they'll expand the card show aspect of it moving forward, or no?
I don't know, based on the fact that they've canceled their last 2 events and they seem to have unannounced Los Angeles and are really just going all in on Fanatics Fest New York City again. I say it's a really cool event. I don't know if they made money on it. I don't know if it will prove to be.
It's expensive though, isn't it? Like $400 or $500, something like that.
The VIP
It's expensive.
Was that? I think the VIP.
How many
$400.
people got invited because not enough tickets were selling? Maybe, I don't know. Speculation, hearsay. But yeah, so can they get the attendance? Can they get the justification to make it bigger? That'll be an interesting question to find out over the years.
I like what
Sports.
you did there. I like what you did there. So I know we're gonna be running out of time here shortly.
Oh man, already?
I know. But what do you foresee the future of, like, what's down the road that you're really excited about in the hobby and then for district? Because obviously, like, we're like really pushing, the alternative options. We want people to feel like they have other options to buying and selling and community. And that's what we're trying to provide at dibditcards.com. This show is sponsored by dibditcards.com. Shout out to dibditcards.com. So, breaking news! So yes, if you could just answer those 2 questions, 2 things that you're looking forward down the road as far as in the hobby and then with district.
Yeah, so it's one and the same, honestly, the thing that I'm excited. That's why I love working at district, because I get to create what my vision is for the hobby. It's the fact that, in these discussions of value and reselling, you and Cary are still great friends. Cary and Rod, you guys still just absolutely click together. Cary, you would not have as much fun doing this if it was just dollars and cents. And I know, because you're doing sports cards, you're not doing the highest margin dollars and cents comparable thing, right?
Yeah.
If it's not fun, if people aren't finding other people in it, they burn out. Even when money is to be made, the second that changes and money's not to be made for whatever duration, those people fall away. And the people that remain are the people that still have the connections. So the reason I caution this perhaps bubble of hobby box prices or bubble of, any particular segment we're looking at is because I don't want you to disappear from the hobby. I love you. And this is for the viewers. Like, it's so cool and exciting how the hobby can bring people together. Since I was a kid riding my bike to the catcher's mitt at 78th and Military in Omaha, Nebraska, and now, instead of having to go to a physical place and find 4 other people that love it as much as I do, I can go online and find 4,000 people who love it more than I do and who I can learn from. It's beautiful. The internet can be a beautiful place. Social media can be a beautiful place for hobbies, for communities. That's what excites me the most about the hobby, and what I think we always need to keep our focus on. So if you need to change how you collect, if you need to rip less and pursue more oddball things or Cyril Karn autographs or women's soccer cards, do that, but do that with your people. Do that with your tribe. Tribes have positive things as well as, there's some tribalism we have to fight against, but tribes have positive things too, which is they get us through, right? We need each other in that capacity. So that's what excites me about the hobby, and then why I love district, why I fought to get this job, and why I love what continues to happen is we provide that for people. We provide a place where all the women's soccer collectors can go and talk about that and see that without having to filter out baseball, without having to filter out football. And similarly with Dibdit cards, I know like one of the cool focuses I'd say is how much college collecting happens among those members. Like if you love college cards, get in the Dibdit cards community and you can chat directly with Cary and with Tim and with other people that are deep into college. You know, if you love wrestling and MMA, like Rod, you need to pull more of that MMA stuff. Nobody knows MMA and collecting. Get those people in Dibdit talking about it and having a community finally for themselves. So that's what I love about District. You know, and then the tool traders, the woodworkers,
The plant people.
the plant people, yeah. And so I love the fact that we're powering that for communities that are outside of my scope, as well as learning about new communities. And that's really where I see the power of it. Every tool that's out there, our team can engineer, Whatnot's team can engineer, eBay's team can engineer, right? Amazon. We haven't even talked about the largest marketplace in the world, right? Amazon, maybe Alibaba. Have you ever gone on Alibaba and been excited to see somebody? That's the difference that district-powered marketplaces have, and that's why I love it, is like, yeah, there's commerce, yeah, there's selling and buying, but at the end of the day, I'm excited because I bought it from you, and I get to show it off to you, and you'll appreciate it, and you care. That's what we've built that's so different and what I'm really excited for moving forward.
Well said.
I love it, man.
Thank you. You guys make that happen, honestly, though. Like, I'm excited and passionate about it, but you guys make it happen. It's why I'm loving Dibdit cards.
That's what I love about social media and, like, sports card content in particular is as I talk about things that I'm passionate about, I find people who are also passionate about the aspects. Of course, we all love cards in general, but there's aspects, whether it's college or it's Marvel or it's the 1990s Utah Jazz in my case or whatever. And in Dibdit cards, and the same thing we've done with my bigger channel, Dibdit, like we've focused on what we like specifically, and we built little niche communities within our larger community. And I like that aspect of it a lot. We kind of find our tribe, our people. It's awesome.
I think the cool thing is, I mean, especially not just with this podcast, but what we have in the community there is, like, we're feeding off each other. That's the biggest thing. Like, I literally watched Tim run a show where he was calling, what do you call it? Thanos. You would call him. He was calling him, like, whatever you're calling
Thanos.
Thanos. I got Thanos cards, but it was great because he was literally pulling out cards from a bargain bin that were Marvel cards, and he had ones in there that he pulled out for $15, $75. You know, add these things because we keep talking about these entertainment cards. We're talking about other things, or like we filmed one of the previous podcasts. I talked about UFC, and now Cary and them are like, oh man, I'm gonna start looking for the guy in boxes because Diego Lopez might be a guy to look out for because he's coming up. His rookie card's out this year, and he's going to be fighting for a title and maybe a thing. Or I literally have women's soccer cards now. Like
you've got them.
Yes,
it's awesome.
Here. I got some now because these guys talked about so much. So when I picked up a collection, I was like, man, I know that women's soccer is going to be something good. I need to probably look into. You know what I mean?
I do got to take 1 minute and at least explain for me where some of that comes from. We talk about affordability of cards and how maybe Marvel you can chase a little bit better. Yeah. So it actually came from tickets for me. Like I got into MLS in LA because I couldn't afford football tickets all the time. And I couldn't afford football boxes in 2018, 2019, even before the pandemic boom. But MLS boxes were cheap and we had a really cool team in LA. And then we announced this women's soccer league, and I was able to get season tickets to Angel City for, I was in the first row of the stadium, Bank of California Stadium, and it was under $30 a ticket. I'm like, you can't see a sporting event for that. And then you show up and it's contagious. The players are excited. They're doing something new and exciting. And so that's actually where it came from for me, was being an Angel City fan led me into this. But then I'm like, oh, and I can actually buy a box for $80 instead of $180, instead of $1,080 like the WNBA Prism, right? Yeah. And so, so I just wanted to share that because it's like everybody hearing this is like, what is up with this women's soccer? Well, there is actually fandom behind it. If you watch women play soccer, they don't flop. It's better than men's soccer. They actually play hard. And USA is one of the best teams in the world.
I get the DC spirit here, and I would tell you that if you ever get a chance to go to like one of those games, if you're ever in DC and you can go to Audi Field, whether it's DC United, whether it's the Washington Spirit or the DC Defenders, it is an absolutely electric place to watch a sporting event.
Well, guys, I think it's time to. I don't want to cut off the middle of this conversation, but I know Ivan's got to go pick the kids up, and it's that time. So, guys, please go check us out on Dibbit Cards. If you don't, please make sure that you guys do like and subscribe to this podcast. We appreciate each and every one of you. Tim, any final words?
No, this is awesome. It's exciting. Obviously, like we're all like geeks and nerds when it comes to like sports and the hobby in general. And like I hope that all of our passion for everything from the dollar boxes to the $100,000 cards and everything in between came through to the audience today from the four of us. So we definitely appreciate you guys and gals watching.
Cary, any final words?
We're excited about Dibdit Cards. I mean, obviously we're talking about it a lot, and it's something that we're a part of and we own and everything, but it's something we really believe in too. It's something that we see a lot of potential in, and I just encourage you guys to come over and check out an auction or list a couple things, or just watch what other people are listing and see if it's something you're interested in. I've enjoyed it over the last couple months, especially since I've really pushed it and tried, and I've loved
Tim,
it.
let me ask you this: what's the giveaway?
Yeah,
I haven't decided yet. I got to figure that out.
Well, I'm going to up the giveaway. You're also going to win. I don't know if is it going to be two people or one person. What do you think? If I throw something else in,
You want to do two people, guys? Two winners?
Sure.
Yeah.
We can do two winners.
Two winners.
so District's going to throw in a $50 District credit. So one of you that comments below with "Happy Birthday, Ivan." I'm absolutely milking it here. Was there something else? A hashtag or something?
Hashtag no bangers.
They have to be a member of Dibbit Cards.
Yeah.
So you have to be a member. So put your username.
Yeah, well, to use your credit, you're gonna have to have to go sign up. So, so put your username, "Happy Birthday, Ivan," hashtag no bangers, and you'll be entered for a $50 site credit to go and spend on cards, singles, watching auctions, boxes, whatever.
So Ivan, when are you going to announce when you're going to be doing your live show with us?
yeah, man.
I got to work on some inventory stuff. You guys don't have spots. Like, there's so many people already that are excited. I'm like, oh wait, they don't have like a gap. Like the first time we did it in the women's soccer HQ, they had to like be like, okay, Ivan, we need you to go live at this time. You guys are just cruising. You guys tell me when to go because I don't even know where there's space.
We're going to work on a raid train soon for sure.
End of March, we're going to do a grand opening. We're going to do a grand opening on Dibbit Cards here. So it's coming very, very soon.
Sign me up. I'll take 30.
We are going to be taking. If you guys are interested in that, you'll start seeing stuff being posted in the sellers chat. So make sure you guys are there. Check out the chats because that's the most important thing on there. Because you can search for your cards, let people know what you're looking for. Also, too, we give tips and tricks for all sellers out there, and we do set raid trains to help you guys grow as a community because we want to make sure that you're successful. And we all firmly believe that we're stronger as a community than we are individually. So that's what we're all about, working together.
All right, I burnt my finger heating up a steak and cheese in between podcast recordings. But everybody, put your hands in.
You're a gamer, though, dude. You're a gamer.
No bangers on 3. 1, 2, 3. No bangers!
No bangers!